cottage meeting, and I'm not quite sure what the protocol is, but I thought I'd go over some basics. First, you might have noticed I probably had too much coffee. If that's the case, if I need to slow down, put up the stop sign, and I'll slow down. My wife's used to doing that. The second is that, as I understand it, cottage meeting is that these are supposed to be interactive, and that's clearly what we're looking for here. We're seeking your input. No final decisions are going to be made here today, but we're looking to share what we've discussed and been working on over the past months. But, in order for this really to work and be beneficial for your time and ours, interactive. Raise your hand if you have a question. I think Allison's monitoring Facebook if there's a question there that we can address. But just interrupt, stop me if you have a question. So before I go any further, Pastor, would you open us with a word of prayer?
Let's ask for the Lord's blessings upon our reading today. Father, we're looking at a major project, and we know that it only is successful, O Lord, when you build it. Unless the Lord builds it, those who labor in vain. So therefore, Lord, we ask for you to reveal your will to us, to see which way we should go from here for Christ the King. As we heard that the population of this county may grow to 200,000 in a short time, another 200,000 people. Help us to understand how we best can serve not just the present needs of Christ the King, but the future needs of 200,000 more moving into Ellis County. Give us wisdom, give us guidance. We thank you, Lord, for all those on the building committee. They've spent a lot of hours and done a lot of good research. Look forward to hearing, O Lord, their sharing today. Bless them in their efforts. These things we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. There's a handout. Hopefully I caught everybody. If not, there's some more back there on the by the offering trays, but it's going to follow the outline. And rest assured, my wife will be signaling over here if I'm running too long. I have a tendency of talking, and just do wrap it up. I understand that as well. With regard to introductions, again, my name's Carl Goss, and I want to first remind you who the members of the building committee are. It's myself and Bob. Thank you.
Saying the last name, do Carl.
Are the co-chairs of your building committee. We're joined by Meg and Brent Rutan, Margaret Smith, Mark Landry, James Hammer, and the pastor. And so it's been a real treat to be working with this committee group of believers that have met through thick and thin. We had a breakthrough moment I want to share yesterday, one of our standing meetings. We have a tendency in the building committee to talk about, what's our plan? Our plan. What are we going to do here? What's our next step? And one of my very dear friends brought us back to center. And as you'll see in the title of today's agenda, Seeking the Master's Plan. Whenever you embark on an effort like this, it's easy to get, our vision, my vision, what I think is best for the church. And it may not always coincide with what the Master's plan is. And so she brought us back the center. And thank you, Margaret, for that suggestion. But seeking the Master's plan is what our goal is here. We started meeting in February of 2020. What a great time. The world changed shortly after we started. I don't have to tell anyone that here. And, we've continued to meet throughout the 10 months. First, it was in person, and then we moved to video calls, and now we're doing this sort of hybrid, video call in person, depending upon your schedule and your ability to meet. But, it's continuing to work. We're continuing to meet. We're keeping minutes of all of our meetings, and so you can track those if you want. We're trying to keep, moving forward. One of the other things that we did, in addition to meetings, we've been taking tours. It was suggested one of the ways that we can learn is by taking tours of other churches that recently expanded or moved. And that was very insightful, and it was very good use of time. So far, we've done 4 what I would call extensive tours. St. Joseph's Catholic Church there on Marvin, St. Paul Episcopal there on 287, Barley Street Baptist Church, College Street Church of Christ. All 4 of those had recently, within the last 10 plus years, had built new facilities. And so we got to learn firsthand by our guides. We've learned something at each site that we visited, and furiously taking notes, taking pictures, and it was a heartwarming situation where the churches gladly opened their doors. We didn't have to bribe or pay anyone that I know of, but they gladly welcomed us in. Offer to help us any way that they can to serve our mission, and so that was really heartwarming. In addition to that, we've had members of our committee, also visit like the First Baptist Church and the Avenue Church, and we're taking things away from those churches as well. So, meetings, tours. Next, we've been talking to experts. We've talked to architects. We've talked to real estate brokers. We've talked to the city. We've looked at engineer reports. We've talked to an appraiser. We have talked to representatives of the Missouri Synod in terms of building fund programs and what they would recommend. We've talked to other churches as well. We've reached out to Mansfield Church to see what they're doing. And so we've been gathering information. We've been talking to the people in the know and trying to make an informed decision. I know Pastor cringes every time I say this. I sort of viewed the pandemic as sort of looking for the silver lining of the pandemic. It's allowed us, we were busting at the seams when we joined in 2019. It was packed. We had visitor rows up around the walls, and you had to sort of dance through. But with the pandemic and the change of meetings and participation, it's really allowed us sort of a window of opportunity to go through sort of this very methodical approach of gathering information, gathering data, so we can make the best informed decision about our future. Okay, I'm going to stop there, see if there's any questions. Great. If not, our segue is Brent Rutan, Margaret, with regard to demographics.
Good afternoon. So I'm Brent Rutan, and I know I have spoken in the past already about the demographic research that we did, but it's really important to kind of set the table for the rest of this discussion to decide where are we going and why. And so what we did early in the process was that we obtained the forecast of growth by different demographics from Mission Insight, which is a church prescribed service. And they go through everything that you could imagine, but we narrowed our scope to a 10-mile radius from this address. And so in that research, we've seen that in the last 10 years that we've grown about 27%. Let me read my own scribble. So we've grown from about 90,000 people in the last 10 years to around 114, 115 people in this specific radius. That's not a specific city. So by 2024, we're projected to grow another 14%. By 2029, grow another 12%, to where we'll be at about 145,000 people living within 10 miles of this location. That's growth of 30,000 people. And so the demographics didn't really change much between ethnicity and age. The largest age group is the retirement group, which is like 18%. Now, one thing that did change a little bit is the household income. So people are moving in from other places. And one thing that we talked about is with, Carl mentioned with COVID, what was the silver lining? You can look at it as silver, or you can look at it all ways, but you hear about large cities, urban areas. People don't want to live there much anymore. So you hear about, I want to get out within a short distance of a large city to where I can work, and I want some acreage. Well, guess what? We nail that, right? Letitia and I just had a developer that we met with last week, developing a large plot of land right behind our house. He's putting in 91-acre lots, and those houses are going to be expensive. And so it's a different demographic that they're attracting. And the reason for that is, we see in this research, it goes right along with the research that we're looking at. The good news is that the household income is projected to grow, not through stimulus checks. And so it's by 2024, the number of households with over $100,000 in income will grow from 35% to 33%, excuse me, to 39%. Households over $200,000 of income, excuse me, did take my Aldrich pill, grow from 4.5% to 8.5%. So higher income, people moving into acreage lots, it fits us. So if we're going to grow by 30,000 people in 10 years, by 2029 it was the date. If you look at the research of how many people in our area and nationally identify as Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, about 2%. And so without doing any marketing, pulling people from other denominations, just saying, hey, well, if we get the people who already identify as LCMS, so a strange way to put it, isn't it? When I heard myself say it, I thought, that really doesn't sound right, does it? That would bring about 600 people in. Now, the research also shows that we know not everybody's going to go to church every Sunday, right? And so research shows that about 25% of people who do identify with a denomination will be active and attend. So you take that 600, knock it down to about 150. So we should expect an additional 150 congregants without doing anything else, right? That's without any market stimulation, just pure growth from what's moving in and letting the numbers roll. And so what that will do is, not knowing if people are going to come at one service or another, or if we have to change for that, we also have to apply, think about parking. So we would need another 75 to 100 parking spots to facilitate that type of growth. So the bottom line is that was our first step. We said, you know what, something has to move, something has to push. Whether we try to expand on this property here and look at some of the land that's for sale next door, or look at someplace else. Now, Margaret that's the qualitative approach that we took. Or that's a quantitative approach. Margaret is going to talk more about the qualitative side of that.
Thank you, sir. Hi, I'm Margaret Smith, and I am a new Lutheran. I was without a church for a while, and I didn't have a church family. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have people to cook for. I didn't have people to pray for or worry about. And then my friends, Brent and Carl, said, Margaret, we found it. I said, you mean I don't have to drive to Dallas anymore to go to church? Nope, we found it. And I walked in and I found out right away that this church, as the kids say, has it going on. There were people here to welcome you as you walked in the door. The sermons were over the top. Sunday school was the best I've ever been to in my life, where we learned, we laughed, we loved, and we walked away better friends and couldn't wait to come back again. And our job as the committee is to take all that wonderful love and feeling and fellowship, and by the way, in less than a year, I'm in a band right over here. At 70, I've made it. So our job is to take all that wonderful emotion and that love and wrap a church around it. I don't know where that's going to be. And if you held down each committee member and say, shall we go or shall we stay? They'd all go, we haven't decided yet. We don't have enough data. And that's what we're doing. the most effective, efficient, loving, wonderful committee I've ever worked with. Nobody is taking the lead. We're all learning from one another. And are we thinking alike? Absolutely not. That's not our job. Our job is to think together, and I promise you that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brent and Margaret. And is there any questions, I guess, on the demographic side of things? Again, I think the numbers speak for themselves. And, it really, tells the story of what's going to happen, whether we do something or not, within this 10-mile radius. So we sort of broke it down. You can see item number 3 on the agenda, stay and expand. And then you can see, dropping down to number 4, it's leave and build. And so those are real simplistic, and there's a lot of thought that goes into each of those. But with regard to stay and expand, I can tell you what we've done. Again, a wonderful architect works with the Architects. This also happens to be a Missouri Synod Lutheran, and he's also been actively involved with Ellis County. Architects has done a number of prominent projects here in particularly the county courthouse, the train station. They're working on the city administration building. This guy is plugged in and really giving us his time and his thoughts and ideas with no compensation. He's familiar with our property. He's already come up with a plan, a proposal that, what's the opportunities or the possibilities here. We talked with him about the pros of this site. And if you gathered from those earlier churches I mentioned, except for St. Joseph, St. Paul, Farley Street, College Street, they all relocated from the core of the downtown area out further north where that residential development's taking place that Margaret was referring to. And so, when you compare that to where we are, we're sort of in the catbird seat. 287 frontage, that's where First Baptist, built their new facility at. That's where the Episcopal Church. And so you sit there and go, wow, we don't have that issue of being downtown, sort of secluded. We're already out here and visible. And so we talked at length about the pros of our location. And then, pros, cons. Anyone who tries to find this church has probably drove by it the first time, or the second time, or the third time, trying to find our single driveway, our access point to the 287 service road. I found this interesting. I'm always learning that our church, hopefully no one corrects me, built in 76, it was built here before 287 bypass. That road wasn't here, and so it explains the orientation of our church and the way it was laid out, welcoming people in from the cul-de-sac area into the facility. And so now you sit there and say, well, that's why there wasn't an emphasis or a focus on the visibility. We didn't know at that point in time what 287 was going to be. And so you sit there and you go, okay, this great location, we're north of town, we're where the growth is happening, but yes, we have visibility issues. We have constraint issues with regard to our land parcel. And, as Brent was talking about, the need for parking. Again, before COVID, we were busting at the seams. We were parking in the dirt, trying to find a parking space in order to come to church. So those are things that we're going to have to address. So pros, cons. We've talked to the city already about the zoning, their future vision for this area and their requirements. If you look at their zoning plan, this is high-density residential. Think high-end multifamily is their goal for this property and the property just to the east of us. When you look at their vision plan for what they want to see on this property. Shortly after we started meeting as a committee, the Manley property, what we refer to, or lovingly refer to as the Manley property, Thomas Manley used to live there last, still owned by the Manley family. The colonial house there to our east became available, and everyone went, ooh, there's the answer. We just need to buy the Manley property, and all of our issues will be solved. And again, you got to take a step back. Yeah, that was provident, that it was there. It's not so provident when you look at the purchase price. It is a high purchase price. relatively speaking. Also, when you start looking at the configuration of the lot, there's floodplain to be considered. You also have to realize that it's not a true corner, even though it goes all the way out almost to Brown Street. You can't access the property from Brown Street, so it doesn't have those corner characteristics that you would want to pay a premium for. And then, as everyone knows, even if it did reach Brown, what are you going to do with it? There's very little depth for a long portion of that track. And so, when you take a step back and you look at the aerials, you look at the zoning, you sit there and go, okay, maybe for a price, that might be an attractive alternative. It's a little over 3 acres of net acreage. Maybe we could take some of the acre plus in floodplain and maybe reclaim that. There's programs in which to do that. And then what do we do with the house? A historic house that's on the property. Do we demo that? Is there a use for us? And so we've been looking at all those things. We've walked the property. We've like I said, trying to explore. And again, if it was a cheap price, I'm all for a bargain. It's not a cheap price. It's $1.4 million is the current asking price. We've had direct contact with the seller, Thomas Manley's son. Yes, I'm motivated to sell, but only at this price. And so it's not a bargain, and we've gotten independent confirmation of that, and so but they won't sell us just sort of what our immediate need is. They won't separate it. They'll sell it all, and then the brokers offer to help us sell the balance that we don't need. But again, is that in our best interest? So just want you to know that we're looking at that. We've talked about like the multifamily property to our west. They actually have frontage that they're not using. Can we possibly buy a part of their frontage and use that for our second ingress point, and or maybe put our signage there before the bend and improve our visibility there. So we're pursuing that. We're also, we've kicked around the idea of maybe buying a couple houses that abut to the cul-de-sac. Is that an option for us? Will the city let us move in or tear down those houses or encroach, sort of a church use into a residential subdivision? And so, we're exploring all those things. We're running them by the architect and, seeking input. I'll stop there. Anything else? Any questions?
Hey, Carl, the
Yes.
property to our west and the frontage, is it enough for just only an access point or enough room to build facilities on as well?
Depending upon how much they're willing to part with, we're thinking maybe it could accommodate parking, but not facilities. So maybe signage and parking and an entrance is what we're thinking about possibly gaining from that. Okay, any other questions? If not, I was going to ask, this wasn't point counterpoint, but the other option is leave and build. And so I've asked Bob and Meg to share some thoughts.
Thanks, Carl. Can we advance the first slide? We've been talking about the demographics of the area coming up. I was fortunate enough to get a late night file of everyone in the congregation and their address. So I've taken and plotted those addresses on a Google map, and unfortunately you can't see. You want to go back one?
Back one?
This is plot our congregation where they have their listed addresses across the United States. And I bring this one up because this is the big picture. Where do we live? And unfortunately the dots don't show up on here as well as they should, but we have people living in Chicago, residing in Chicago, and as far west as Phoenix, and the other dot in here is Kansas City. So that's the official addresses that I was given for the congregation. The next slide takes a look at where that spread of the congregation exists in Texas. And you see that The majority of the congregation is centered around, the blue dot is the church, and this is the greater metropolitan Waxahachie area. And, but also we have people as far west in a little town out here called Rory, and as far south as Pflugerville in the south. And, but again, the next slide, if you just take and zoom in on the 10-mile radius that we're talking about, where the population growth is, you see 90% of our existing congregation resides within that 10-mile radius around the church right now. Some of the far northern Dallas suburbs have some population, but again, the majority is in this 10-mile radius. Italy is down here, and south town, I can't remember, it's not quite close to Mansfield yet, but those are the outliers. The next slide is Ellis County, and here's where you pick up the vast majority of where we live and what we travel to. So we're talking about population growth specific to this area, and also what's going to happen with the commute if we were to stay or if we were to move. So this became our target area for looking at area of lands that are currently available upon which a church could be built. So the next slide addresses the issues. Do we stay or do we go? And Meg has been working with the realtors and the commercial property vendors in the area to talk about the options that are being presented to us. And I'm going to ask her to talk about her research and what she's done to bring us to this point today.
I don't know that I need that, but okay. So if you'll go to the next slide, Allison. So if you drive down 77 and just about anywhere, 287, you'll see Hy-Vee Realty. And Brett Hess is a commercial broker that works there. So I called him and engaged him and asked him if he would talk to us about our property, about the Manley property, and about options on where we could go. So he provided, late last night, we were working on a PowerPoint this morning, 6 options of land. The star is where, no, I guess I do need this, Bob. I don't know how to use it though. The button on top? This one, okay. The star is where the church is. Property 1, I believe, is right here. And there's properties down 287, properties 2, 3, and 4. There's a property over here on Broadhead. And then off of this map, there's a property over by the Life School on 77. So these are all properties that they're familiar with that they thought would fit within our requirements of acreage. So the next slide is Site 1. This site is on US Highway 287 South. At 235 West W.C. Calder. There's 19.82 acres. It's in the Bluebonnet Trails Commercial Development Park. It's on US 287 on the southbound frontage road. It has electric, city water, and sewer accessible. The price on that property is $1.7 million at $2 a square foot. Next slide. Site 2 is about 3 miles away. It's on Highway 287 on the north side of the road. There's 25 acres there with 2 lots fronting 287 and backing up to Park Schoolhouse Road. It's valued at $1 million. It's listed for $1 million at 92 cents a square foot. Site 3 is on the North Highway 287 on the north side. It's 15 acres. It's in Waxahachie past the Park Schoolhouse Road. It's listed at $1,006,236, and it's at $1.54 a square foot. Option 4 is 3.2 miles away. It's on Highway 287 on the north side, 16.5 acres of commercial frontage on Highway 287 and Park Schoolhouse Road. There is water line to that. Other utilities would have to be added. And it's at a great value of $560,000 at 78 cents a square foot. Option 5 is 1.75 miles away from, and when I'm saying that, I'm talking about from our current location. There's 4.629 acres. It's on Broadhead Road, 1 block off of Highway 287, located between Howard Junior High and Knights of Columbus Building. Its value, estimate at sales price is at $899,900 at $4.46 a square foot. The last property is option 6 on Highway 77 north of the Life School Road across from the car wash. It's 50 acres are available and they will subdivide that. The 50 acres is for sale at $1,089,000 at $2.50 a square foot. Any questions? So those were all of the properties that we asked them to target for us that were within close proximity to where we currently were. I was pleased with what they came back with. You know, some parcels are way too big for what we want, but some of them provide a great means of growth down the road if should we want to add a school or a gymnasium or other amenities to attract people to our church.
Would it be potential ones that aren't like subdivided, like when you buy 25 acres, would it be possible to sell off, like if
Sure.
you don't have, you could sell off part of that one as well?
Absolutely. And of course, they'd love to help us do that.
Did you say that the lot right next door is 1.4 million?
Yes.
Oh,
Or 3 acres?
yes. Yeah.
Sounds like a much better deal.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
That we probably wouldn't want to use.
You're right. I mean, it was universally accepted that their asking price of $10 a net per square net sellable square foot, or net dry square foot, however you want to phrase the floodplain land, is too high. And so, you know, the Highview real estate brokers are saying, you know, maybe $6 a foot. So it's a significant discount. You know, we don't think that the seller, since it just listed, you know, has reached that point yet, but that's still an option for us. But we also have to understand, even with that, it could solve our immediate needs, but do we want to be looking past the next 10 years to the next 20 years? And you know, then it's going to be your physical constraint there.
Based on your kind of projections on size, do you have an estimate kind of roughly on this acreage that you need kind of over that, like 5, 10, or 15?
I think the long term, and we've actually heard it was the, which church? I think it was the Catholic Church that was indicating 10 acres is sort of what their diocese it spelled out. And we've heard, I think Mark Landry had shared that you know, the Lutheran Church had also dictated 10 acres for a property up in Irving. So that's sort of but it depends, right? You know, if it's rectangle is perfect. You know, if it's not divided by power lines, you know, like one of the sites over here has a power line running through it, sort of like College Street Church of Christ. You know, they have 10 acres, but you know, they can't utilize a portion of it. So it all depends. But yeah, that's the general size.
It might be too early for you to know this if you just bought it last night, but on the properties that they presented, there's still a fairly wide variation in the cost per acre. Is there, do you, off the top of your head, do you know if there's a reason as far as like the location being quite a bit better for the one that's say $2 an acre versus the one that's 78 cents?
Well, I would guess that it's whether there's utilities already to the property, what the development costs are going to be, is probably dictating the price.
Do you have any clue what that, does anybody know what kind of investment that is?
Not yet.
Not yet.
we heard a horror story from our friendly guide at the Episcopal Church, that they started their construction without water there. And, it's always been a challenge, for development on the west side of 35, and that's why you don't see a lot going on over there. But, they're 3 months into construction of a 9-month build, and their contractor's about to walk off the site until somebody got a hold of the fire marshal and said, hey, this fire hydrant's and he got the city wheels a turning and got water out there to them. But in terms of actual costs, that would be part of our investigation as we dig deeper into each of these sites.
Okay.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Bob.
Did you by chance look at, we have sand, leave and build, and did you chance look at leave and renovate? Are there existing properties that could be renovated, or that just doesn't make sense?
Oh, no, that is, and that was one of the topics for the brokers that we, because as we jump ahead here, if we were to leave and build, what would happen to this facility? Is there a demand for this church? And, the brokers, of course, they're in the business to sell. It is, yes, there's move-up churches all the time. They pointed to both all three churches that I mentioned earlier, St. Paul, the Farley Street, College Street, First Baptist, all sold their churches to what they call move-up churches. They're looking for the next step. So there'd be a market here. We're not aware of any churches available, sort of that fit our criteria. We saw one the other day, Mount Missionary Baptist Church that apparently is empty, but it has, we'd be taking a step back. But that's clearly something, as my wife will attest, I'm all about, can we reuse and rehab and recycle?
Prior in some of the earlier board meetings, we talked about the zoning and things like that, and what we could do with our property. We kind of gone into depth on that and was allowed. Has that changed? Has our knowledge changed on what we can do here since some of those prior meetings?
Just more informed. The gentleman from Architects is, in his close working relationship with the city, that's what he based his plan on. And so he met with them, the building setbacks from the property, from the frontage, from the side, and so it's been incorporated. I can't cite those for you, but yes, we did confirm what can be done on this site.
Is it something where what we have, can we expand on that? Is that still?
Not without additional land. If we're looking to build I probably should have started there. With regard to the expansion, our thought is a new sanctuary that can accommodate maybe a future 300-person capacity in order to address this future growth. And, that's what the guidance that we provided to the architect that he put into his plan, using this existing facility and then building a new sanctuary. And that's where we came across the parking. We bumped up against the parking requirements, and that he said, if you could just get an acre from your neighbor, you're good. You got your new sanctuary. And that's where, they won't let us buy just an acre. But we did approach them about that. But you can always go up. Sort of, if you're familiar with like the Avenue Church that was there on 77, they went up in their classrooms. The Farley Street Baptist Church there on Marvin went up, and their classrooms became a 2-story structure, and so that's another option. But again, it comes up to parking. And that's, we talked to the broker that was involved with the Avenue Church, and they finally made their decision to relocate and go north, just because they became landlocked and they paved everything, and they were taking buses and picking up people, which that presents a whole new dynamic. Okay, is my wife signaling yet? Okay, not yet. Okay, feedback. For those of you who don't know what I do, besides dressing like a banker, I am a banker, have been for close to 30 years now. And I'm the guy at the bank that people don't like. I'm the credit guy. I'm the guy who gets to say yes or no on your loan request that come in from from the bankers. And so I'm the no guy, right? And I'm thinking, oh, I'm probably the wrong guy to put in head of a committee like this, because I'm going to say no. It's in my DNA. I'll ask 1,000 questions and then I say no. There's a rare occasion we approve a loan because I understand the bank has to make loans in order to make money. Not everything can be cash secured, but and so it was me looking for item number 5, this financing feedback. There's sort of two schools of thought. I just, again, hoping for feedback on. We're blessed in that this church property is free and clear. The saints that have gone before us, have done their job in just, maintaining an incredible building. The brokers have taken a look at this and said, hey, this is in really good shape. There's no, deferred maintenance. There's no excessive wear and tear. And it's free and clear. That's why I tell my kids that's the best kind of car. Not the new flashy car, it's the paid car, right? And so we have a paid car here. We have a paid off church, and that didn't come without effort. I can assure you of that. And all the years of paying off a mortgage that was used to finance this church. And so I don't take that lightly. And so one thing that we're going to have to make a decision on, whether we seek to expand by acquiring the property to the west, the Manley property to the east, or if we decide to leave and build, is how we're going to finance that. And again, I've dabbled enough with church financing at banks that it's a tricky business. There's all different ways if the bank takes a look at it. But one thing that we're going to have, the issue that comes across is, do we want to leverage up this church to buy, say, the Manley property next door? Do we want to put a mortgage on this? That would preclude us from having to come up with a down payment. That would allow us to close quickly. We go to the bank, say, we want to refinance this and borrow X amount of sum against this in order to finance the purchase of a property next door. That's one way of doing it. The other way is a little bit harder. That's where we would raise funds for a down payment. We would only mortgage the property that we're acquiring, right? And so that we're not putting this church at risk. As Pastor mentioned today during our Sunday school, the future is unknown. A year ago, no one, I could even probably spell pandemic and the impact of what's happened. And I can't tell you 12 months from now where we're going to be. Is it looking hopeful? Yes, 2 vaccines in the work. But even then, the experts I listen to or talk to, say it's still going to take time. And so, what the future needs of the church is going to be, I can't tell. What's the future contributions of the church going to be? I can't tell. This is a period of uncertainty. I see it across all kinds of businesses and industry at the bank. I see it at the bank itself, going like, "Wow, what were we thinking?" But again, it's just something that we have to deal with and address. But so. Thoughts on financing? And again, I was thinking, well, maybe a straw poll, and then somebody would have to count the polls. Thoughts on financing? Would anyone be just opposed to the idea of leveraging the church to quickly acquire a property, or do we go to the next step? And just 2 more thoughts. We do have over $200,000 set aside for a building fund, so it's not like we're starting from scratch, and so that's good. What's the other? Oh, it's sort of like an example. So a bank financing, let's say we're able to negotiate down the Manley property and for $1 million. And so do we give them, our $200,000 that we've raised plus a little bit more, and then, put a $750 mortgage on that? Or do we, put up this church and finance that property and keep our $200,000+ as sort of seed money for the building project? Hopefully I haven't confused everybody.
Is there a kind of a financial difference between using the LCMS as stability fund
Good question, and one I'm not able to answer. You know, if their funds are more, oriented towards building projects instead of, land, because this was, whether it's the Manley property or, if we acquire, 10 acres somewhere else, there's sort of a speculative aspect to that higher risk, but I would have to talk to them to see if, we could utilize their funds to do that type of investment.
It always seems to me like there's so many different moving numbers, and it's certainly appealing to go buy 10 acres so you could just build what you want somewhere. But then you think about the kind of insurmountable costs that don't seem like we really have the funding to come up with all of that.
Right.
And then you're telling us about like a 1.7 million property next door, which doesn't exactly sound good either. And I'm kind of curious, like as far as pricing, by the time you get to an idea of renovating this church, assuming you're not going to tear down the building anymore, because that would be the same thing. Purchasing the property next door, tearing down all of that, building what you want to new here, like, is there any idea what the cost would be between that type of thing versus just going somewhere else, purchasing 10 acres and building a new place?
Great question. We haven't reached that point. We have not priced out, like, say, the plan or the proposal from Architectus. We could probably do that, and that's just, doing an incremental increase for the parking that we would need and give us our, 200-plus person sanctuary. I don't have that number, though.
It seemed like before we talked, it was quite a bit lower on the cost if we stay here.
Yes.
But then it seems like there keeps getting added in different components to it, so I just kind of wonder where that price is going.
That was one of the questions that we asked all of our tour stops. How much did you spend on your new sanctuary and he readily shared that the Catholic Church spent $5 million on their new sanctuary there on Marvin. And so, we've been soliciting that, but to really feel comfortable, I think, we can get ballpark estimates for new construction versus an expansion. I will tell you, just from 30 years of banking, it's always going to be cheaper for us to stay here. But does that give us the future opportunity? And so that's where we're not going to be able to make it, in essence, a mathematical calculation. I can't say 5 million here, 7 million there, and you're going to say, oh, we're going to get the benefit of $7 million. There's going to be that unknown, if we build the $7 million facility, will the people come and support that?
At least to me, it would make a big difference if you're talking 2 million to stay here versus 8 million to somewhere else.
Right.
Versus going to be 5 or 6 million to stay here and going to be 8 or 9 to somewhere else. And the picture kind of changes.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, one of the things that we found with all the churches is that, their initial building on the new builds, they have expansion plans. Like the Episcopal Church has a mirror building for their assembly hall, which they didn't get to build the first time. If you followed on Farley Street Baptist Church, they built their sort of gymnasium first and met in there for the first couple of years, and then they built their sanctuary, the wing. And so they sort of take that leap. The same with College Street Church of Christ. They've added like 3 wings since they first met there. And so, that's sort of a, I don't know if we'll ever be able to afford that turnkey $8 million. All right, we're in and we're done. I think it's going to be measured steps, and that again sort of impacts that number. Can we get somewhere for $5 million? Yes. And then look for future expansion there. Yep, Mark.
Carl, in there also some talk about work being done on the 287 bypass road out here.
Yes.
Which could take away some of our property. So it gives us an unknown there.
Right. We have looked at the plans, and again, I think they're starting way over towards Arlington, Mansfield, and coming this way with their 287 improvements. And I think on first blush, and again, can change, is that we're not impacted. I mean, we're sort of the ideal situation right now. We already have the service roads in place, and we have a nice 4-lane section of 287. I think their intention is to add another lane. I don't think they're necessarily going to be encroaching on our property. They will keep it within the bounds of the existing service roads. Oh, Allison, all right.
Tim Holtz, who has been kind of the process from the very beginning on Facebook, kind of answered the lead question. To renovate, we had numbers for 4 million, and to build new, it would be 8 to 10, and depending on land. That was from our previous research, from previous architects a few years ago. And not exactly sure on the numbers, due to that, give you an update. That's
Yeah.
a long part where that was earlier.
Okay. Thanks, Allison. Yeah, Ron?
Some kind of goal, we had 3 options. We get those pictures of the
Yes.
layouts. As the committee evaluated those, is there something ideal about any one of them, or are they all insufficient for what we envision the future to be?
I wouldn't call them insufficient. I mean, a lot of work and thought went into those. I think those were all sort of tied to the existing land footprint. It was all within the existing boundary because they didn't know about the availability of the Manley property at that point or the possibility of going there. We can go back and study that. To me, that's, I wouldn't say, that was a wasted effort. I think there's something to be learned there. Again, we can have an architect, we already had another architect come up with another sort of configuration on here as well, that, is comparable to what that was done. So, yes, I mean, I guess to answer your question, we've taken those into consideration, but, I don't think it really solves the fundamental question of, do we leave and build or stay and expand?
The thing about those, we're not going to allow the growth that we're projecting based on the growth in the area.
Right.
I would be great to do, say, about the size, but not.
Yeah.
I would say, the council brings this up sometimes with committees, when I think we look at finances, kind of the way he says a lot of times with committees, if there's not enough interest within the church to get those 5 people to join the committee to begin with, it's probably not worth the commitment to go forward. And quoting Pastor on that a few different times, I think looking at that the same way to me, I think applying that to going in debt, is you want to make sure that you've got the commitment of the church behind that. So I would think that we need to raise to some extent, not saying not to go into debt, but I think they can show that commitment of the church, you guys have some kind of commitment financially along with that. I almost, my favorite going into debt is figure out kind of, it's almost like that same thing of a new person buying a home, you want that buy-in from that. I don't know, I think Pastor's been wise in saying that on the community structure and almost say, kind of applying that the same way, but, just my input.
Well, no, and exactly what we're looking for is part of the point of this cottage meeting is, somebody said, oh, no, we don't ever put that on this property, or, hey, given the uncertainty of the pandemic, we should, what are you talking about? About expanding or taking on debt or adding on? So that's the feedback that we're looking for, because you're right, we could be going off down a tangent, we could design a Taj Mahal and, be a beautiful structure, but, it's just, like you said, us on the committee, we can't pay for that. It's gonna take the entire congregation plus. Great segue question, because I'm sure my wife will be giving me the signal here in a second. Number 6, next steps. We've actually commissioned an appraisal. The brokers gave us a wide range of a ballpark. But before we make, an informed decision, we've asked a local commercial appraiser, Mike Atwood. He's appraised over 60 churches, has experience, actually has a formula, which he's going to share with us in terms of, is this property big enough to accommodate our existing congregation and future growth? And so he's going to be sharing with that his knowledge there. But we've commissioned an appraisal just for helping us, again, make that decision as to what this is worth, as is, does it have more use as a move-up church or a commercial opportunity, or combining it with the Manley property. So, we don't have that number yet. Yes, Pastor.
One option, and I know church has done this to afford building nice buildings without actually straining the church members' pocketbooks, is, let's say, for example, you have those 50 acres, $1 million. I'm wondering, if somebody in our church knows a developer they would like to partner with us on, and then we buy the 50, but then he develops it and splits costs, and we get revenue. Before you know it, you have the building, you have the property paid off, and you have a big fund to start your building.
Right.
I don't know if anybody knows developers in this church that might take a chance and say, I'll call this developer, see if he'd be interested in partnering. Because I don't think we have a developer in the parish, but it doesn't behoove me that there might be somebody that knows a developer that might be interested in saying, yeah, I'll partner with you in that, and we'll make both money off it.
Yeah.
We can't do that as a nonprofit.
To keep your tax status, you have to have, if you have a certain percentage of threshold, if your income starts coming from commercial operation, you're now in commercial operation. We don't want to pierce that. But some of them look into it. Probably easier to say, hey, it's just be flat, sell off, if it's a 50-acre spot, we need 10, sell it. I mean, that to me, that's a better option. But there's so many different options. And like what Carl said, this conference meeting intent is to get feedback. We want to be transparent and make sure that everybody's informed, but also we just want to take people's temperature. People feel very much opposed to taking on certain debt, like what Carl said here. People feel opposed to moving from this site, and you have to consider, like I know people have thrown out, hey, we've been at, said that maybe we want to have a church down the road or something like that. I'm sorry, a school down the road, things like that. If you stay on this property, yeah, we could probably get another acre or so, but then we'd still be landlocked, So how far down the road are we being led? And what are the capabilities of the property?
For looking again, what was the age range we're expecting of those 300 immigrants coming into this area?
About the same that we have today. And so the largest demographic is the retirement group, which is 18%. But the age demographics did not change in the forecast that much.
I'm just thinking about, like, especially younger, generations don't see any good church at all.
That's
So,
right.
I mean, how much would you, just not even,
Yeah.
on Facebook and not having the actual structure.
Right.
Started off to change, right? But, that's also changed what you're expecting the next year service.
Hence the reason you have that school. That way it brings in the kids. Exactly right.
Well, and I'd also say that we looked at numbers based on a point in time, and since then, we've seen and heard on the news every day a huge migration from the northeast to the south and a huge migration out of California. So our numbers are probably underpredicted. We argued this back and forth about where should we end up based on all this data we had. And we argued back and forth about COVID. Should we consider COVID in our factors? And we started to consider it, and now we just kind of thrown it out and said it's not going to be here forever, we hope. But we do know that the migration is coming. So our numbers are even lower than what we agreed on.
Yeah,
And we
that's
never
a,
did really argue.
Yeah, we're very conservative on our
Yeah.
growth, and we knocked down those projections at the time. And so it's a very conservative growth projection. And all you have to do is look at all the developments going in Dallas County right now, I'll tell you,
Right.
it's already coming. And
Yep.
in our, saying that we would have another, 150 LCMS congregants coming into the area in the next 10 years, that's just doing nothing. That's just saying, okay, whoever's living there, they're going to come here because they're seeking out a church. That's about any marketing, no stimulation or anything like that. So we're way on the low side of growth potential in that long
I heard it mentioned about what the Texas district got planned for planting churches in this area. Back in the early 90s, we got hurt when they shot his Midlothian, and this church not open.
right.
And then it goes back and they close it. So is the district got any plans of planting other churches in this area?
Visit with St. John's because we heard that they were thinking about planting a church in Midlothian, talking to the pastor and some of the leadership, and they're not. And they're no longer looking.
The Texas district is basically going to support the church, but the district usually has the people or the churches look for the churches. Once in a while, the Texas district will look at an area that needs to be served, but they're right now thinking, I don't see anybody in communication with Pastor Newman, president of the district. There's no communication about having to open up a church because right now, Christ the King is serving this area sufficiently, and St. John's Mansfield is serving that. So we fight now, I don't want to say fight, but, Midlothian is between us. And so some go that way, others go up our way. And then Ennis, there's nothing in Ennis, the Missouri City Church. There is word that the North American Lutheran Church in Ennis is going to convert to Missouri Synod. Because the pastor is colloquizing in the Missouri Synod, he's looking for more conservative. And the church there said, well, if he becomes a Missouri Synod, we're going to have to, otherwise we're losing the pastor and losing the church. So that's the conversations going on that I'm aware of the district right now.
Would it ever be possible to partner, like, say, in kind of what's happening now, would there be any interest in them? I know I don't really know that well, I know they're tiny, but would it be built a new facility, would they have any interest in using some of that facility for their own purposes, or, kind of helping us?
You mean over in Ennis?
I'm sorry, in what's happening now, the one that's, with Mike and Diane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one downtown,
Right.
the church there in the old,
Yeah. Right now, it's still kind of under the process of developing into a Missouri Synod church. It's not officially done. So what's happening now is kind of an independent church. Yeah, they've got what's called a mission status, but the mission status is written out. You're supposed to be working toward actually working sacrament ministry in a short time. They're still in the process of maybe working toward that working sacrament ministry, but they're not there. So it's not really an official church from the Missouri Synod.
Well, the district and all this growth, what keeps the district kind of, okay, we'll just spread this out. And start another congregation, like or Hillary or whatever, which is, this is kind of growth, it's not like, so it'd be better to move on.
Yeah.
You go out there, I mean, that's something about.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you would think Red Oak might be a place that the church might be a good spot for an expansion, but nothing, no talk. It's ELC. Yeah, they're still not open right now.
Norman, a question?
Yes, I really have a question.
Oh.
I keep hearing the word pandemic around and how it's affecting us and our decisions or whatever. I could be way off base on this here, but I just think sometimes the Lord uses things like the pandemic to wake us up. And I'm thinking that out there is waking up a whole lot of people to realize that there is a God out there and we need him. And we are being forced at this point, like to go online and all these kind of things. There are all kinds of people out there that we don't hear anything about, but they're hearing that message coming from somebody. I think that we are at a point where we take a step forward in faith, not letting the Almighty God stop us, because the Lord is going to provide. What we need to do is
I would agree, but whatever decision we reach is going to be set. Because we don't have $8 million, $5 million sitting in the bank account.
if we do our job, and all these people come, we're going to find the Texas district and everybody else find a copy of us and do
could be the model.
Are there any other churches that we could, obviously you can't join a school and make a school at your times, but are there any other small churches in our area that might benefit from having something like a gymnasium or something like a, some thing? Nobody needs it maybe every single day. Would there be any possibility or thing where you could potentially join forces with other people?
Possibility we have I think it was Margaret on our committee that, talks about how underused, church is. And, when you sit there and talk about millions of dollars and you would meet there twice a week, 3 times a week maybe, except for Kurt, who meets here, and Pastor, who's here all the time, but, and Allison. But that's a possibility, doing it, I know the church close to our house that was formerly the College Street Church of Christ, they actually had 3 different churches meeting in that facility, and they divided it up. One church owns it, they lease it out to the other 2 churches, but they're not utilizing. And so that's how they attend the overall property, but. Okay, yes, Donna?
One time, several years ago, when we built on the section here, there was talk maybe that we could put in a gymnasium and use it for what we're using it for now, when needed. And like whenever we had people who wanted to use kids and all, they could have a place to come and make it like a 2-story structure where we only did have a school here, we didn't have classrooms.
Yeah, the concept, again, that's another application the church can use. It hasn't come up in our discussions though.
So that's basically the problem. It's not the way we can build. Our problem is basically the problem.
Parking, yeah, to accommodate, the various members. Yeah.
And the zoning
Okay, I know, I'm surprised I'm not getting waved at. Okay, I know we've interfered with lunch. The one item I didn't touch upon, I'll be really quick. I had it under feedback, 5B signage. I wasn't here last week for the voters meeting. We were sort of self-quarantined, but I understand the topic of signage came up. Wanted to let everyone know, we talked about it again yesterday in our building committee meeting. We have approval to spend up to $35,000 plus raise funds for a sign. We are going to hold off on making any sign decision until we're further down this path. Because of, yes, you could build a sign that could be transported or moved, or it could be sold with the property, but, we think it's still a little bit premature. So just wanted to, in case anyone was concerned or put you at ease, it is a topic, it's in the forefront of our mind. We're happy with the authority that the church has given us. And I guess that's it. Okay. Any questions before? Yes. Thank you. Well, that concludes our cottage meeting. Again, the building committee members, feel free to contact us. I know it's sort of sometimes, hard in a large audience to raise a question. Feel free, catch us on a Sunday, catch us on a Wednesday. Reach out if you have other ideas. Donna, like your idea with regard to the gymnasium. Like I said, we're just gathering information at this point, and the Spirit is leading us. And like I said, seeking the Master's plan is our new mission. Okay, bye.
Shall we close with the Lord's Prayer?